this month's issue of The Radar, I would like to personally and formally introduce everyone to the Overcast podcast. The podcast was started by our broadcasting and journalism team and led by none other than Junior Elizabeth Polo. At this time, the Overcast podcast has produced 2 amazing episodes and is working on a 3rd to finish out the school year. I'm Caleb Evans of The Radar, and let's take a behind-the-scenes look at how the Overcast podcast came to be and why you need to take a listen.
So basically with the podcast club, what we do is every episode, basically, we take a topic, and it could be any topic, and we really want to get to know the members of the student body, and so our main goal is to let the students at Huntingtown High School tell their own story through different experiences. So our first episode was your most memorable high school experience. In this upcoming one, we're going to be talking about seniors' legacy when after they graduate and any experience in which Huntingtown has given something to them and they've given something back to Huntingtown High School.
What was the main inspiration for making a podcast?
Well, 3 years ago, when I was a freshman, we created the Forecast, and I just thought creating something from the ground up, it was so much fun, and just watching the process grow, and it's literally your baby almost. And so I wanted to do the same thing, but kind of incorporate the broadcast and the journalism newspaper aspect of it all into one. And so I thought over the summer having a podcast for the school would be a great way to incorporate both of those things. And it's just what I've always wanted to do for the past, 6 months or so.
And what has been the hardest part of this process?
It's definitely more difficult trying to track people and interview subjects to have on our podcast. And I feel like once our show gets more recognition, then it wouldn't be more difficult as time goes on. And
about that, what do you believe people will get out of the podcast?
So basically, my thought process, not only for podcasting, but for journalism, and I'm sure for broadcasting with the Radar as well, is that everything and everybody has a story, and that you just have to dig a little deeper and ask questions to find out what that story is. I feel like if we bring that out and show it to the student body in our community in Calvert County, then it'll be a nice experience to have for people to have and view and listen to, I guess.
What has been your favorite part about making this podcast and the whole experience?
I think my favorite part is definitely getting it started. Just the whole planning process of it. And when we reached out to members of the band and the orchestra here at Huntingtown to create a theme song, because every podcast, to make it unique, we need a theme song. And when Mr. Allen shared the songs that the students created, it was just a realization that this is it, and I'm actually creating a whole podcast with the other members of this club. It was just really awe-inspiring to me.
As of now, what is the schedule like?
So the podcast club meets every week. Wednesdays during B lunch in Mr. Allen's room, and Fridays during A lunch. And I'd say once every 3 weeks we produce an episode. Friday during A lunch, and we have everybody sit around in a big circle, and we have this microphone, the boom mic, and we put that over our heads, and we just have a conversation like we're just talking to one another. It's a pretty fun experience.
What can you expect from the podcast club and the podcast they create?
Hopefully it'll end up like the Forecast. I remember 3 years ago, our number one story had only 100 page views. And this past year, one of our stories, it was about Encanto by Jennifer Izaguirre. Her story got about 800 or 900 page views. I really hope that our podcast will really get in touch with our community and be shared with our families and our friends. And I hope it'll grow into some big podcast experience within our school.
Along with that, where can people find the podcast?
So right now, the podcast is on YouTube, and for the weekly or monthly newsletter that goes out to students, we should have a link to that along with the forecast and the radar. And we're hoping to have a link on the forecast, which is hhsnews.net.
When the skies are gray, tune in to the Overcast podcast to brighten your day.